Hello everybody. In this short video I want to give a few tips from my recent experience using Trados Live. My name is David Hardesty. I work in the Nova University in Lisbon, Portugal, the FCSH Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. Trados Live, a few tips, May 2021. So, the first tip I'd like to give you is that I actually have two different logins for the system for Trados Live. One is called DH for David Hardesty. The other is, and DH is my main administrator account. When I made the users for my students, I also included one for myself, William Hardesty, where the user is called WH, and that's me as a translator reviser. I find it very useful to have an identity where I'm a translator reviser, and a different one where I'm the project manager, administrator, just so I can show views to students without having to show all the work of all of everybody. Okay, other thing about users, it's very, by the way, I also normally have these, when I do a Zoom lesson, I have them on two different machines, my desktop and a laptop, so I can switch between being an administrator, project manager, and a translator and reviser, so I don't get the two confused, as you can see I just did, if I work on one machine. In the users, make sure you send an invitation early, so if anybody doesn't respond to the invitation, you can chase them up, although in this case the student's given up. Another thing as well is when I make the user groups, I put them into, when I invite and students join, I put the students into groups. You can see here there's something called Turma A, Turma B. Turma is class in Portuguese, so I put the students in a class. Okay. Now let me go to William Hardesty and let me see. Remember that when you log on, if you go to the inbox, you can see if there's any, students can see if there's any new work for you. Here we can see a lot of work. Remember that another big tip was that if students decide to click on this and open it up in the online editor, this doesn't mean they can start translating. So just be careful. Students can open a document, but they can't start translating because they have only opened it up, but they haven't accepted it. Another thing is that when you open a translation or revision, we can see it here, and we click on the arrow to go back. So the point is, if we actually select this, we have to accept it before we can start working on it. Let me actually accept a translation down here. I'm going to accept this, and when you accept a job, the inbox if you now go to active, you can see the jobs that you've accepted. When you've accepted a job, it will be inactive, and now we can just click on it, for example, and open it in the online editor or in Studio, but we're getting experience online. Now we can change things. I can type because we've accepted. Remember, we can open and close by clicking here. So that's basically things for user. Now, let me go back to my project manager identity and look at projects. Very quickly, I found projects a bit confusing at first, until I realized the following. projects are essentially made up of resources. So click on resources and look at these and try and work them out. Certainly work out language processing rules you don't really need. What you need to know are some basics, which is terminology, obviously links to term bases. When you click there, you can make a term base. Translation memories, we should be familiar with if we've used the desktop version. Here we can click, we can make a new translation memory. A translation engine is a new idea to me, and it's basically a collection of resources. So it's a resource of resources. If you click on a translation engine, what I would strongly suggest is you make one. Just to save time, I'll just edit one. So this is one that's been made. And what's in a translation engine? Basically, it's some housekeeping languages. And in it, you can choose the languages, source language, target language. You can choose one or more translation memories, or you can make more or add more. You can choose a machine translation service. You can choose a term base. So basically all your linguistic resources. I'm just going to cancel this because I don't want to change it. By the way, a tip, I actually have a service to DeepL, and it took me a while to realize that if you want to add a resource like that, you have to click on your username up here and then click where it says add-ons. That's where the that's where the machine translation services are located, and you can click on one and you can install it, although this one is already installed. Okay, that was, let me go back to, quickly go back to the resources. So basically, I like to build up. A translation engine is made up of resources such as translation memory, terminology, and machine translation. So make sure you have those. Select a machine translation service if you want here. Make or add translation memories, term bases here. Then you can make a translation engine. Here we can see students have made several. The other resource that you should make, if possible, before making your first project is a workflow. What's a workflow? Well, if I click on one of these, the tips one I've made, we can see it's all these stages. Remember when we make a project in Trados Studio, we tend to add batch tasks for the stages we do before we start translating. Then there are things we do after translation and revision. Now, let me show you, again, we haven't got time to make a workflow, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is my big tip is keep it as simple as possible in the beginning. So again, you have to give a name, say the location, the languages. I use the standard template. I haven't changed that. Now, where possible, automate. Otherwise, I would exclude. So what I basically do is when there's a human task which I don't want, I exclude it. Otherwise, I automate. You can see everything's automated. Machine translation, well, it's automated, and so on, analysis. Preparation, I've excluded this task as it's human and I don't want to do it. Now, there are three things I want to draw your attention to. One is translation, where you have to assign somebody. Now, notice I've assigned myself the translator. I would strongly suggest when you make a demo workflow, you assign yourself as the translator. Don't assign, for example, class A. Because if, for example, you put 20 files in it, everybody's going to be invited to translate everything. Put your own names to begin with, and then you can restrict how many people are invited initially. Again, when you make it, put yourself here, And then there's just one other at the very end where you can, it says error, assign yourself as well. And then you finish by saving the tips. I'm not going to make any changes, so I'll just close it. So that was a workflow that I just quickly showed you. So now, basically in resources, we made a translation engine and we made a workflow. So now when we make a project, we make a new project. Basically, we just have to give some details, and then that's, if you like, the admin. Now we move on to the next. By the way, as a tip, if something's wrong or you've missed something, it will have a red exclamation mark. The translation engine, you can just select the one that you have previously made. Just start typing. Oops, sorry. Tips is the one I made with. So there you are. I've got my translation engine. I don't need to change anything. So I'll move on to the workflow. Again, I'm going to select one that I also call tips. I called it tips. There you go. Perhaps tips too. I don't know. Okay. Tips. And what it's doing is loading everything. And now the settings at the end. The only thing I would suggest you do change is the editing of the source text. You don't necessarily have to change anything here when you first make a project. Now you can create a project. And if you notice, you just did a few administrative settings in the general, and you already had your translation engine and your workflow. When you open those, you can still tweak them a little bit. Now, there's one thing, unfortunately, I forgot to do with this project, which was, of course, to add the files. The project was called Tips. I think it's being made, actually. Sorry, I just paused the video to save time. I forgot, in general, of course, you have to drag or load some files. So, just load some files. And now you make the video. I beg your pardon, now you make the project. Now, let me just pause the video while it makes the project. Excuse me. So, now, the project's being made, and we can see it here. So we could actually open up the project, as I'm sure you've done. Just a little thing to show you. Something that greatly confused me in the beginning was what stages are and what workflow are. If I click on stages here, I can see the stages. If I click on Analyst Tips, and then I click on Refresh, it's still doing the analysis. I can actually see the project being created. You see what I mean? Now it's ready to translate this file. Now it's got everything ready. There's just one other thing I wanted to show you, which is if you click here on a file, you can then reassign the task. This is very useful. So I've opened up tips. I've opened up the project tips. These are the options. If I go to stages, I can see where it is in terms of the stages. If I come and click on a file, I can reassign here. And then I can, for example, assign this to trauma A. If I assign this to trauma A, what's going to happen is everybody in that class is going to receive an email, or rather, and everybody is going to receive in their inbox new that this is available. The first student that clicks and selects it will be given that job. Rather than having 20 files and you have to say, right, file 1, student 1, file 2, student 2, say all the files, and we can actually click here and here and here, or you can I can reassign all 3 of these to somebody else, if you see what I mean. I think it's still reassigning though, that one, so let me just do these 2. Yeah, so I could have clicked on all of them and click on reassign, and then I could change it to a group. Make it trauma B this time. And save it. So just a tip, when I make a project, I assign all the jobs to myself, so none of the students get an email. Okay, what will happen, just out of interest, is if a student goes to new and sees those files, let's see if I can... So these are the most recent ones. If I was to, as William Hardesty, if I was to click here and accept the job, then no other student in that class will now be able to accept that. So it's a good way of saying, here's 20 files, allocate them to the whole class, and tell every student to click on one. Okay. I've run out of time, so thank you very much for watching this video.